that's where the birthmark issue comes from. But what I can't get my head around is why no one is questioning the facts, especially Guidance, who seems to take a massive interest in this Hampstead case. Why is he not questioning the fact that Bill Maloney's online? I'm going to play it for you.
Let me just, I have to change all this around. Bill, are you there?
I'm here, Lou. I'm on the street though, so.
That's all right, Bill. We've only got 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so congratulations on your work and getting it out by the mainstream media.
Yeah, how'd you do that? James Fielding, well done on your work and getting it out via the mainstream media. James Fielding at the Express, where Robert Kellaway's working in the background, and Sonia Porton.
Can you tell us a little bit about? I know you can't say too much for legal reasons, and you don't want to bring any sort of harm to the guys who are exposing this. But can you just give the listeners here a brief rundown of what happened and how you got involved with this case?
Right, listen, yeah.
Or of what's come out on the Sunday Express yesterday. I know you can't say too much.
I'll let him talk.
But if you can give us like the basics.
Yeah, it will be very basic as well. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
First of all, I would like to start by saying that we have an international paedophile ring that's been operating within every democratic government on our planet. There has also been connections to the Middle East all over the world. We're looking at the killing of children.
Let's play a child porn video one day. Let's play it, and I know it sounds appalling, but let's see the reality of what these young children have to go through. Let's see the physical injuries that they endure, the fear in their eyes. And that's not even going near the satanic stuff.
We're going back towards just a guy called Sidney Cook, which those that are initiating.
If anything, I'm still registered sick. That's because you're very high up, man, within MI6 and all that old Bill world. And you know it.
What was that?
And so was Bill Maloney, the fake child abuse activist. Where's he gone now? Where you gone, Bill? Where's Chris Fay? Where you gone?
Stop. What was...
I doubt we can even get off this planet, is the actual truth of it. So I don't know. But I believe it was all an act, because it all coincides with Bill Maloney telling me my life was in danger, which is to frighten me.
And is Bill Maloney dead?
Bill Maloney's not dead, no. He's hiding in some caravan somewhere, according to Tom Cahill and a couple of other people.
Now, he's a journalist.
Who is?
Bill Maloney, yeah?
No, well, he was supposed to be an anti-child abuse activist, but... I've
heard his name before.
Yeah, well, Ian Puddick funds him. And if you doubt that, I've posted up a video on my YouTube where they're talking about the Hampstead cover-up, and you'll hear Bill Maloney in his own voice saying, I've been working with Ian Puddick, and there was no need to drop that in the conversation, because he doesn't go on to any other point, just says a very intelligent man, and I've been working with Ian Puddick. And I just thought, what's that doing in there? But I'll have that, thank you very much, because, this is a geezer that's saying that I've called him a name. This is a bloke that's bought me a piece of equipment to film a Fernbridge witness who's going to accuse everyone under the sun. And Bill Maloney, the geezer that you're funding, is telling me my life's in danger, which is why I go to Downing Street and tell them my life's in danger, which is why I know I reported Ian Puddick first. So it's ridiculous. But
anyway, back to
question. What was your the Red Rooms? Well, it's Nick, isn't it? Xaro Nick, David from Panorama. It's all Andrew Ash, whose full name's Andrew Ashworth. Yeah.
Sorry, you just lost me for a minute. Where did that come? Sorry, who's this new character?
Andrew Ash. How did we get onto that? What did you say before that?
I didn't say anything. You were talking away, and then out that came, and I'm just
no, because it was relevant. This is what I'm saying. You got to catch me on it, Christine, because I've got so much information in my head. I really need to do a documentary and put it down. It's going to be about 6 hours long.
No, I know. My brain is slow because I'm flued up, see?
No, hang on. I'll tell you how we got to it. We was talking about Tom Watkins. We was talking about Faith Open Charity and Danny Bear and Daniela Westbrook getting sent up the shop to buy Tom Watkins Tampax for his arse.
Yes, and then
That's where he was. And then
Andrew Ash.
and then that's right. And then I said Andrew Ash apparently knows Tom Watkins as well, because I'm saying Tom Watkins is a high up music mason, and one of the people to tell me that was Andrew Ash, who is also AKA Nick from Xaro, right, and David from Panorama. It's all the same bloke. Andrew Ash, the Operation Fernbridge witness that.
Oh, I see. Now, David so he's been on an episode of Panorama as some kind of person telling all.
Yeah. No. He told all on the interview that I filmed of him for the Express, which was Bill Maloney and Chris Fay, yeah? Do you remember?
Yes.
Right. That's where he tells all. And then
Panorama?
And then 2 years later, in 2016, he ends up on Panorama being shot from behind so you can't see his face, with his voice dubbed with someone that sounds just like him, saying what they want him to be saying. And I know that to be true because I've got a recording I could play you with Andrew now saying, I didn't want to do Panorama, it was Chris Fair. He says, didn't want to do it. And he said it was all Chris Fay done an interview. I didn't want to talk to him, but they had footage. And I said, yeah, well, that's the footage that I've filmed that they're showing you. And he's going, your name never came up. And I've said, well, I'll bet my name did come up because you just said that they had footage. That's the footage that I put up of you talking to the Express, James Fielding. And Robert Kellaway was working there at exactly the same time. So is that a coincidence? No. It's another setup. So I could go out there thinking I'm helping, name names that Andrew's telling me, only need one of them to be wrong, and then he's discredited, and my credibility's gone. And then who's going to listen to my real phone tapping evidence? No one. That was their plan, and they've been caught. Unlucky. Try again. Something better, a bit cleverer. Except they're not that clever. All they can do is go and pull a dark, nasty move and kill you, or, you know what I mean? So I've got a bulletproof vest here, Christine. I got it yesterday.
Oh, cool.
No, it don't work very
So, do you think
well if
that...
you're shot in the head.
Yeah. Do you think that Tom was maybe abused when he was a child?
Tom, what, the manager? I've got no idea.
To make him so, I mean, like needing a Tom Hanks, was that because he had like a few guys at one time?
He's a dirty, manipulative bastard who likes to control everyone. And relating to it all, after John brought it up and I'd spoken to Daniela, and then obviously I was going around just saving clippings because it helped me in my mind piece everything together first. Because I needed to know what's going on here. You know, I'm getting stories left, right, and centre. Got Ben Fellows, you know, telling me stuff about the manager, and like it was coming from all directions. So I think I've handled it pretty well, actually.
You have, yeah.
I've got quite a good fix on what I think is the full picture as well now. You know, with what Tom Watkins has done. You know, I doubt I'm ever going to be able to properly come out with that for the sake of not myself, you know, for someone else again. But that's what's right. It's not down to me to make that call. I've got Watkins anyway. I've got you anyway, mate. You give me gear at 17. If we just want to go there, let's go there in this silly political correct world now. You gave me cocaine at 17 years of age. Jimmy Savile's your mate. Jonathan King's your mate. And Andrew Ash, David from Panorama is naming you as well. I think that's more than enough, Tom.
These subjects will understand. We're looking at the torture of children. We're looking at snuff movies. I'll tell you what happened. One snuff movie, our victim was forced to film a snuff movie. All by Sidney Cook. This is our witness.
He's a little Indian boy called Vishal Marotra, and he was 8 years old. And looking at his picture, he looks like what you was sort of describing, like he was little, he was cute. Do you remember sort of like did you ever see him smile?
33 years after his son's murder, Vishal Marotra won't allow himself to forget. He's kept Vishal's old school reports as well as some of his drawings. This was a child who loved to draw and was clearly very bright.
I don't want to praise him, but it says boy genius. Basically, in a very short period of time, he started doing very well. He was doing boxing, learning the violin, which I still have.
You must have been very proud of him.
I was very, very proud of him. If I had been given an opportunity to see him grow, I'm sure he would have grown into a very nice, mature, intelligent boy.
At any point, I know there weren't fucking nothing to smile there, but
He was the cutest little boy because he was.
did he have a little sticky, one sort of little sticky out tooth up top when he smiled?
Had a nose tooth, yeah.
He had a what?
It was like a gap.
Like a little gap or a little sort of coming out the gum where it's a little bit higher or something. Like,
I think it was like milking teeth, you know.
right, okay, yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, no, whatever you will put this way, he's not. I don't think he, but he's got to be him. He's got to be him, Andrew.
And probably got Cambridge or Oxford.
Vishal never got that chance. Those old school reports and drawings are in the same file as the newspaper cuttings, an archive that reflects the tragedy of what happened. This story begins on July the 29th, 1981, a day you will remember. It was the day of the royal wedding.
No, I know you're not. I don't expect you to say the name.
I'll tell you what because I know that if I was the parent of a child that's being lost,
Yeah.
and that child, I'm not just going to give.
Mate, can I have your blessing to talk to the dad and say this may be a possibility of of your child. It may or may not be.
I know that you're when you get there to see the thing, but I think that I need to know 100% myself, before I go to I would.
Andrew, I'd talk to him for you. You don't have to only do something like that if you felt that you was up to it. I'm not on you to feel under pressure to do anything. But what I'm saying to you is.
I know 100% that I don't know the name of the kid. I don't want to.
Well, do you mind if I contact the dad?
To the moment.
I was an article clerk and my office was overlooking Fleet Street on the second floor. The wedding procession was supposed to come from St. Paul's Cathedral down Fleet Street.
But today we have the delight of all these children awaiting this great moment as we await it now, as the bride's procession.
And so we decided at the office that we were going to have a office party.
An office family day. Vishal, his sister Mamta and their nanny Janita arrived at Vishambar's office to watch the procession go past.
So all of us, we went with our picnic basket to the office. It must have been about 11ish when we got there, and we were all having a laugh.
Coach, which we can see without periscopes, comes to a stop at the bottom of the steps of St. Paul's. The door opens and for the first time we see in all its glory that dress.
And say, look, this may or may have not be any help to you, right? But all I know is the circumstances under which his boy was taken seem to marry up with what we're being told here.
Walk down to Temple Station, and which straight goes to East Putney Station. East Putney Station was our local station where we were living.
They went home to prepare for a holiday. The family, including the nanny, were due to fly out to Jersey for a 2-week break. Vishal says that one or perhaps both of his children had a cough.
And I told Jonita, the nanny, to go and buy some cough syrup. And the children both wanted to go with her because they thought they could get a sweet or chocolate or something, which I give them, I don't know what, 10, 20p, whatever it was at that time.
Vishal, tired, left.
I went home and literally hit the sack in my bedroom, closed the door, went to sleep, and I must have zonked out.
At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he woke up and asked Juanita where Vishal was. Juanita said she thought he was sleeping in Vishambar's bed.
She said that after having crossed the road, suddenly Vishal decided that he wanted to go back. So she saw him cross the road back and start running towards East Putney station. When she and Mamta turned around and went to the shop. And that was the last she saw of Vishal.
At what stage did you start panicking?
The panic was already coming there because he was not the type to not inform me or any member of the family if he was to travel anywhere else.
Vishal says Vishal would have known the route home, crossing Upper Richmond Road, running down Keswick Road before cutting into Lytton Grove and then Homebush Road where the family home was.
There's somebody's mother and everything. I don't know what has happened to her son.
What's your reaction been to the news that the remains of your son have probably been found by the police?
Well, it came as a shock. Well, I suppose I should have expected it, but
though it was a very bright sunny afternoon, there were very, very few people and traffic on the roads. So it was a very quiet day.
Not many chances then to spot an 8-year-old Indian boy wearing a white and navy striped t-shirt, black cord trousers, and newspaper reports at the time say blue or white trainers. Those trainers, as you will hear, will become important. The family contacted the police. Vishal says they were told to wait to see if he came home that night. He didn't.
After that, they did do a thorough search. The Met Police were involved, and they were really, really trying their best to locate him.
The operation grew and grew. Vishal's picture was released and broadcast on television, with any potential witnesses asked to come forward. There were, newspapers say, over 200 reported sightings. Nothing, police said, was being ruled out. But in February 1982, 8 months after the search began, Vishal received a phone call with the worst possible news.
When I got the phone call from the police that they had found the body of Vishal, I broke down completely. I was a zombie for months.
I know that you went to the Isle of Wight a year ago to see Sidney Cook in Parkhurst.
No.
What was the reason for the trip to the Isle of Wight?
Just an holiday.
Andy, come bruv, because we might as well fuck off now if this is going to go like this, seriously.
So what did he say again?
Last year, you visited Sidney Cook.
They all know what I'm saying. And the fact that they're not recognising this evidence, it is, they don't want to go into Leveson Part 2, right? They don't want it. any inquiry that they tell you is going to happen, they don't really want an inquiry. They want it to just all go away. Well, this one is not going to go away. See, this is what I'm saying. This is exactly what I'm saying about this country. It is all wrong. I'll tell you what I'll say to all of those people that have been out there, right, investigating this phone hacking and everything that you've been doing, Leveson inquiry and all this stuff. I'll tell you right now, theatre, farce. I'll tell you why I know for sure. Let me tell you why. Right, as I was getting to now with this, when we was talking about Operation Fernbridge just now, yeah?
Uh-huh.
Well, I need to explain this to the listeners because this is really important. Now, in 2014, like I said, I've been watching a lot of Bill Maloney videos and him having a go at different politicians, and I thought this guy was real. He was a real anti-child abuse campaigner. And because of what the situation with the old manager, I've been brewing on it for a while, and obviously this is what has led me into watching Bill Maloney's videos. In the end, I think I'm going to contact this guy because he's running around with a camcorder, and I've got 3 Canon 5D Mark IIs, and I can set him up a lovely setup when he films his victims and stuff, because this is real stuff. I was believing, and this needs to be done in a really good quality way instead of just on a camcorder. So I contacted him, and I also told him that when I lived in Walthamstow, in another part of Walthamstow before I'm in the house that I'm in now, I think that one of Sidney Cook's gang was living next door to me. Because I bumped into one of my neighbours from that little close.
Jason Swift.
Jason Swift, yeah, the murder of Jason Swift, and so I bumped into a woman called Beverly who used to live on the same little close where this guy lived right next door to me. And when I was a kid, I can remember this weird skinny geezer leaning out the window with a camera, but there was a field over the back of the new development where we lived, and I thought, well, maybe he's just taking pictures of that. There was a low-flying kestrel, and, you're a kid. I didn't know what a paedophile was. I had no idea whatsoever. And I thought of this after I spoke to this woman, Beverly, and she said, yeah, we moved from there because of that thing that was living next door to you. And I remember saying to her, yeah, what was his name? Was his name Rick or something? And she goes, I can't remember his name, but he was something to do with the killing of that Jason Swift. So when I got home, I Googled it, and I thought, oh, mate, I've had one of Sidney Cook's gang living next door to me and didn't know it. This geezer was taking pictures when I was younger and that. There was a few of us little kids there. And so obviously, when I've gone to contact Bill Maloney, I've put this in the email, and I think this may be one of the things that tipped it over the edge, and he contacted me straight back. So from that point, I feel honoured. This guy's gone come down, and I feel like, oh, he's bringing me in. Thanks.
In Parkhurst, on the Isle of Wight, for 3.5 hours. Yes or no? I'm not going to ask you about the conversation. Did you or did you not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, was that Fernbridge that told you to go and visit him?
I don't know who told me to visit him, but it was.
Why did you go and visit him?
Who took you down?
Hang on, Chris. Who told you, right? You don't just get in to see Sidney Cook.
Vishal's body was found buried in a shallow grave near a copse in the village of Rogate in Sussex. 2 pigeon shooters out walking made that discovery. Vishal was missing his pelvis, legs and lower spine. His torso and skull, as well as a clump of matted black hair, were recovered.
You kept on hoping that the police were wrong. You kept on hoping that he will still walk in. You dream about him. You dream about, you want to believe in ghosts at that time so that at least you can communicate with your son.
Sussex police began a murder investigation, but the case soon went cold. And that was that. There is just one more thing. A phone call taken during the search for Vishal from an unknown man, recorded by Vishamba.
He sounded as if he was in his late 90s or early 20s. He did not say that he was a prostitute, but he merely said that he had a lot of information about pedophile rings where politicians and judges, some police officers were involved. he was begging me to take him seriously, because he said to me that he had attempted to get in touch with Scotland Yard and they had not taken him seriously at all. I recorded his conversation and then I transferred it to another cassette for my own self and handed the recording to the police.
What the police did was to tell Vishal to ignore it.
About a week later, they came back and said to forget it, there was nothing in it, and they did mention that yes, they knew this guy had tried to contact them, but they didn't believe anything. It was just some crank call.
But now, 33 years later, with the press consumed by stories of a paedophile ring in Westminster and London centring around the Elm Guesthouse in Barnes, with Vishal saying he was purposefully kept in the dark by police with potential leads like the call not followed up on, he believes this.
It all points to one thing. There must have been a cover-up.
What would it mean to you to get to the bottom of what happened?
It would be in their interest to uncover any cover-up that might have been, irrespective of whether politicians or judges or even the police were involved or not.
You don't. If I wanted to go and see Sidney Cook, no chance. Anyone in here, no chance. You just said yes. You went to see Sidney Cook.
Talk about it, because if you talk about that, then it's gonna. The guy will get walking free. He's due out next year, either end of this year or next year.
He won't walk free. All right, he will not walk free. All I want to know is, did Fernbridge send you to see Sidney Cook?
Not Fernbridge. It came from Ireland.
Deep this thing gets,
Cook's one of the worst. Goes to one of the worst, but these are the worst people out in the world.
And they don't only owe this to me and my son, but they don't owe it to the public. And it's time.
It is time. We are on
Road.
Say again.
Upper Richmond Road here, and that's the East Putney tube station or railway station just on your right here, where Vishal and the nanny and his sister came from Fleet Street, where they'd been to see the royal wedding, and their father's offices in Fleet Street. He was a solicitor. I think he'd gone on earlier, but it was the nanny, the little girl, and Vishal, and they came out of here. And I think the little girl wanted some sweets, and they crossed the road, and the nanny saw him back across the road and running up Carlton Road here.
Do you mind telling us your name?
Yeah, my name's Jackie Moulton. I was, at the time in 1981, I was a detective sergeant on the inquiry when Vishal went missing.
Jackie was part of a team of detectives led by Inspector James Begg, brought in, she says, pretty much straight away. The case got a huge amount of coverage in the press, with contemporaneous articles saying that Vishal wandered off into the street parties taking place on Royal Wedding Day. But that's just wrong.
No, that's really not the case, and we have to remember in the 1980s there's no CCTV, and as far as we were concerned, the police investigation revealed that the streets were dead. That was the point. There was nobody on the streets, because if there were parties, there's certainly no parties on this street. And then there's these press reports that said, you know, Vishal was meandering through these enormous street parties. Well, as far as we were concerned, there weren't any street parties, and that was the point. Nobody saw him, and that's what made it hard. You didn't even have, you prise open a tin of paint and you kind of with your screwdriver and you lift it and it just moves. We had nothing. That was the thing. There was just nothing to go on, and that was the really sad thing and frustrating thing, because nobody saw anything.
I'm talking about experiences you had was Cook was one of the worst.
Yeah, with the death, because he left me dead. And he killed me for 3 days. And they kept bringing me back alive for a couple of days. Like, when I say 3 days, it was 2 nights. but it seemed a week because...
Was you kept under some train station or something?
No, we kept in a basement in a
I thought, didn't Bill say something about you could hear trains or something?
Could hear trains going by it and everything.
Oh, right.
Must be. Was
we were in the cellar, underneath the cellar.
Yeah. Fucking hell, what's that like?
I was handcuffed to a kid who's dead.
Well, he wasn't dead to start with.
Yeah, is this the 8-year-old kid?
Yeah. But I was only about, I think, no, he was 10. He looks younger than he was, but he was 10.
Yeah. Fuck.
And it's also, some of the media found out now, because I did the checks on what things and stuff, and I
feel lost.
And they know the lad, they think know the victim.
He's lost.
They took him off the street in London. He went from a children's home.
They just ran him off the street.
They slammed him off the street.
Nobody saw anything. Remember that. Do you remember in the course of your investigations ever digging up information about a suspect, potential suspect, lead suspect, anything of that nature?
There were some notorious paedophiles that were operating at that time, and they became part of our inquiry. But sadly, we just didn't have a clue, if that makes sense. When I say I didn't have a clue, there were no clues, to go on. This boy vanished from the streets of London, and nobody saw anything.
To try and tease any leads out, police put a photo of Vishal out to the press and staged a reconstruction. They took the nanny, Vishal's sister, and a lookalike through the last known movements. But Vishamba's dad says there were issues with that.
The photograph that they took of my son, I requested the police, I said, give me a day or two to find a picture of him recently. But they were in a hurry. And then when they did the reconstruction, the boy, he was so tall and so different, and he was, 10 or 11 or 12 years of age.
In fact, the reconstruction went the wrong way, literally walked up the wrong street. The lookalike was anything but, far too tall, much older than Vishal. What then about this phone call that Vishamba took midway through the investigation?
He had a lot of information about paedophile rings, or paedophile ring, where politicians and judges, and I think he even said some police officers were involved.
Don't misunderstand me. At the point at which we started Rod and Quinton Twist, Cyril Smith was literally allegedly all over it. Yeah. The name Cyril Smith wasn't news. Wasn't news to anybody. It was expected. Yeah. We anticipated that he may be seen. Yeah. And again, if I may say to you, I didn't speak to Bob Glenn about any of this at the time, but I had close, ongoing squad relationships with Dick Griffin and Pete Lamb, who were if I can put it this way, the most frustrated officers, because they were the ones that had done all the work. Yeah.
Now, going back to your statements at the foot of page 3, after observations of the area and the activities in the Piccadilly Circus area and at the flat in Cricklewood, and this is something you told us about a little time ago, there was an initial report submitted, you thought, to Chief Superintendent Neil Diver. Yeah?
Yes.
And you say we had reason to suspect offences were being committed by some MPs, and you say here the names Cyril Smith, Leon Britton, Jeremy Thorpe and Edward Heath would have been named in the report, and the initial report, you say, was submitted to highlight that if further time and resources were spent on the investigation, it would lead to possible arrests and future prosecutions. As a team, we felt sure that the information we had submitted would warrant authorization of further time being spent on the investigation. So this initial report, was it for the purpose of making arrests and the possibility of eventual prosecutions, or was it an initial report, as you recall it, to Chief Superintendent Diver in order to progress your investigation into something more substantial?
Well, it's the latter, to progress the investigation. There wasn't evidence at that stage to make arrests.
Well, you had, I rather thought, on what you were telling us, Mr. Sinclair, certainly an observation or observations of Cyril Smith picking up boys at Piccadilly Circus and taking them to this flat. Was that insufficient evidence for the purpose, or did you want to progress matters further?
I wanted to progress things further.
And what you said, and your concession that you didn't know what the other men you say you saw had been doing in the flat, and it could have been a perfectly innocent purpose, you had absolutely no evidence against those other men.
That's right.
So, evidence against Cyril Smith, arguably no evidence against the other men other than a connection with this flat.
Yes.
What did the report say? Do you remember now? What was its content or its basic content?
I don't remember. I mean, it was just a request to carry on our work. But I can't remember the details of it.
But you're sure it contains the name of all 4 MPs?
Well, I thought it did.
Is there a bit of doubt in what you've just said? Why do you say I thought it did?
Well, my memory's not as good as it was, and I don't dispute that. And
well, let's look at it this way.
I would have thought that it would have, and
well, it should have if you'd seen them.
Yes.
But that's the answer, isn't it?
Yes.
If you had seen those 4 men, it should have named them all.
Yes.
As having links with this flat in Cricklewood Broadway, which required you and your officers to embark on a further, wider-ranging investigation.
That's right.
Yeah. Who authored this report, Mr. Sinclair?
Well, it would have been myself and Paul Holmes, I would think.
And so, if that's right, then Paul Holmes would have co-authored a report to Mr. Diver in which he would have read and known about the names Cyril Smith, Jeremy Thorpe, Leon Britton and Edward Heath.
I would have thought so, yes.
And Mr. Diver's response when it was submitted to him?
He took us off that inquiry. As far as I can remember, he didn't want us chasing MPs, and he said it wasn't in the public interest, or words to that effect.
Now, there's no doubt in your mind this was a report in writing. It was submitted, you think, by you, written by you and Mr. Holmes, but what, submitted by you to Mr. Diver?
As far as I remember, yes.
And how did his response come back to you? Was it verbal or in writing?
Verbal.
How quickly, how soon after you'd submitted the report?
I think it was at the time.
So what, are you saying you went into his office with the report? Governor, I've got a report for you. I want to extend this investigation. He said, not on my Nelly, or how did it work?
Well, I mean, I can't actually remember the details of how it worked, but I would imagine I'd have gone in there and given him this report.
Yeah.
And he'd have come back either straight away, I think it was pretty quickly, and said, no, I don't want you doing it, or...
Did you argue about it?
Well, I was taken aback. I remember being taken aback about it because we thought we were doing a good a job that was going to be a good public service, as it were, and we were taken away from that and asked to look at a brothel
in Hanover Square.
Yes.
But my question was, did you argue to his verbal response that, in effect, he was shutting down your operation for the reasons you gave?
Well, we as far as I remember, I tried to, but it was to no avail.
Did you have any sense of what Mr. Diver's motives were for, other than what he said to you directly, but do you have any real sense of what the motives underlying his shutting down the operation were?
Well, it would only be my personal opinion.
Let's hear it.
Well, I think he was probably worried about his own position in the police.
Well, tell us what that means.
Well, he would probably think that if he allowed an inquiry like this to go ahead, that it might affect his promotional prospects.
He was a chief superintendent. How much further was he likely to go?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, I was a lot further down the chain of command.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would have thought he could have hoped to have gone higher.
So you think it was his personal ambition that shut down the operation?
That would be one of the reasons, yes.
Because you were getting too close to people of public prominence?
Yes.
And what about from your position, Mr. Sinclair, at the time, as you say, a police sergeant? And I understand from you argued your corner for a bit. But beyond Mr. Diver telling you that that's the end of the road, as far as this investigation is concerned, were you minded to go over his head or do anything else about it? And if not, why not?
Well, I'd have probably been back in uniform the next day if I'd caused too much of a fuss.
So there was an internal culture of knowing your place?
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
All right. Well, Mr. Sinclair, it's just gone 11:15. The chair and panel tend to have their break now. We're not finished yet. So I'll invite the chair and panel to take their break and we'll come back, I assume, a little after half.
That phone call ever flagged up to you at all?
No, I think the phone call that Mr. Marotra spoke about occurred after I'd left. But what I have said previously, if Mr. Marotra said that he received a phone call, then I'd have no reason to disbelieve him. Yeah. Very honest, honourable man. So, but I wasn't aware of it personally.
He says that he gave it was all set up to record their phone line because there might be the potential that he was kidnapped for a ransom and therefore someone might call. So it was all set up. So he recorded and gave a cassette to the police. Don't know where that is now.
Well, the police would have. We in those days we had a technical department and who set up those operating recording systems. So
should it still be in existence, as far as you know? Should it still exist somewhere?
I would. What, the tape?
Yeah.
If it was a blank tape, no. Obviously, if it had.
They did that quite a few times.
Just kidnapping, taking them, fucking doing what they want.
But that was
fucking.
He was just doing something on his own. Not for the group, it was his own.
Cook.
Yeah. When they started doing things on their own, so a lot of people didn't like him. We went to the fairground, and we went to the fairground, and we went to Sydney Cook, and Cook says, well, I'll take care of them and everything, but there was an half-caste lad there, already there.
Mixed race kid?
Yeah, well,
half-caste, what we used to call half-caste, which is now mixed race.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not being prejudiced at all, it's just...
No, of course not, I understand that, Andrew. So, you met Sydney Cook, he's got a small mixed race kid with him. How old do you reckon the kid was?
10.
Information on it, yes, but it should be part of that, the missing from home inquiry, because it's still live, although he's not missing from home because he's obviously been found dead in Sussex. So any information that the Metropolitan Police would have had would have been passed to Sussex as part of their inquiry.
Seems like a straightforward deal. All the information from one investigation passed to another. I contacted Sussex Police about evidence they had for the Marotra case. They said that their investigation has been reviewed as a matter of standard policy for such unresolved serious crimes. There are no current developments, but of course we would look into any new information that could lead to a new line of inquiry. So far then, a young boy picked up in Putney ends up in a copse in Sussex. The Putney investigation didn't really lead anywhere. That paint tin lid couldn't be jammed open. What then about the Sussex end? This is a recording of a detective at Sussex Police in 1982, a year to the day that Vishal went missing. I'm not 100% certain who the officer is.
Well, as you know, this time last year, when Vishal disappeared, was the week where Goodwood is held, the Goodwood Racing. and it was in the middle of this period last year that Vishal disappeared. Consequently, this year, what we are trying to do is to appeal to any person who attended Goodwood races last year and is attending this year, and indeed who travelled past Alder Copse on the A272 road in Sussex to come forward.
Alder Copse is a seriously remote area of trees off the A272, pretty much between Petersfield and Rowgate. It's an unremarkable spot. Nevertheless, it pricks the interest of one former detective.
Where the body was found of Vishal, I found quite interesting because Rowgate is a beautiful part of West Sussex, and he was found in marshland on the edge of some farmland, I think, some by men who were shooting pigeons. You know, I don't think that that's just a random place to put a body. So a Sussex connection would be of interest to me. And also I understand, I don't know whether it's true or not, but somebody had seen a very rare Lancia car with a young boy, which obviously there weren't many of those rare Lancias at that time, and I would have thought that would have been quite easy to trace.
It's true that there were reports of a Lancia car parked at a funny angle in a lay-by next to Alder Copse on the day of the royal wedding. Apparently Sussex police put a potential witness under hypnotherapy to try to make them remember the number plate. It didn't work. So no leads, no suspects, no nothing. The paint tin lid remains shut. There were plenty of people ringing the Met Police to say they'd seen Vishal. Newspapers reporting on the story at the time say once Vishal's picture was put on telly, they received 200 apparent sightings. They couldn't all be right. One sighting police did take seriously was Rita Greer's. This is the first time she's spoken about what she saw. Rita was with her husband on the day of the royal wedding in 1981. They were having lunch at her workplace in Putney with her boss and his wife. They watched the procession on the TV.
About 4 o'clock or something, my husband and I cleared everything up. We decided we'd go out for a little toddle in the streets because there's a huge, fantastic atmosphere. Everybody was celebrating. It was wonderful. And there's flags up everywhere and people having a good time.
The couple walked out of the back of the factory, crossing over Putney Bridge Road and into Deoda Road. On Deoda Road is a set of stairs leading up to a footbridge which crosses the Thames. You can walk over the bridge to Putney Bridge Station.
When I went up onto the steps with my husband, there was this boy standing at the bottom of the steps and all on his own. I thought, that's a bit odd. Anyway, we stayed looking over at the sea and the water, and, you know, then we came back down. He was still there. Now, when I came down...
How long had you been there for?
Oh, probably just about 5 minutes, just looking at the water and the boats and things like that. When I came down, he was eating a bar of chocolate, this child, and he had his head back, and... Well, I used to be a teacher, and when children have been naughty and they've done something they shouldn't have done, they've got a different body language. They don't quite know how to be normal. They're very restless. And he had his arms up in the air. He was eating this bar of chocolate with his head right back.
When you say he had his arms up, just describe that for me.
If you can imagine, he's standing there and his elbows are up. He's got the chocolate bar in his mouth. I remember it had an orange wrapper with a silver on the inside, and it wasn't a crunchy bar, but it was that type of chocolate bar, you know, quite a big one. And he got that in his mouth, and he's holding that up with one hand, and he got the other arm up in the air, so the elbow was up in the air, and I thought, oh, I don't know, it's a bit strange.
10, it could have been 11, but I'm sure it was 10.
Right.
10 or 11.
So then what happened?
There was nothing happened at the fairground. We went on all the rides. It was good because we went on all the fairground rides, and you could go on all the rides for nothing and go around the fairground, and anything you wanted, any store. You could have food to eat, they give us food and stuff.
So you're having a good time?
And it was brilliant, it was really good and everything, and they were making us feel really good and everything. They were giving us money to put in arcade machines, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I'd say, give them some more money, but which weren't actually money, were like chips to put in, you know.
So they were treating you well. They were treating you well, making you laugh and making you feel good.
Yeah, we went on the roller coaster, we went on Twister loads of times, around the Twister all the time.
That was Cooks. He owned the Waltzers.
Yeah. He even let us do the controls in a controls and play with the controls to make the ride go around.
He was a bit odd, you know. He didn't seem to fit in what was going on at the time. Anyway, you know, everybody was sort of celebrating, and there was this boy on his own, and he looked a bit uncomfortable, I have to say.
So you think he might have been concerned, worried, just not quite fitting in?
Well, that's when I got the idea perhaps he was waiting for somebody. You know, it was a bit disturbing, unsettling, really. I mean, there's everybody around having a great time, there's flags everywhere and bunting and people having a great time and laughing and joking, wandering about. There's this child on his own. It was so odd because he was, you know, everybody else, all the other children with their families.
Strange. Even stranger was that Rita, walking past this boy twice, once on the way up, once on the way down, seeing him eat a chocolate bar, looking slightly out of place, a bit awkward, a bit distressed, noticed one other thing.
I saw he'd got these extraordinary teeth. The two incisors, they just look like fangs.
This is important. The picture put out of Vishal by police didn't show his teeth. Why? Because police would be able to ask any of the potential 200 witnesses about a distinguishing feature, a feature you could only know if you'd seen him.
Right, so he knew people, obviously. He knew he was Fairground Sid, that's what he was called, weren't he? That was his nickname.
Do you want me to narrow the time frame down?
I would like to narrow the time frame, but what I'd like to say to the audience is, when Andrew tells his story to all us off camera, it's completely different. Now, there's many of you out there that haven't ever told a story on camera. Trust me, it is completely different. It's completely different telling your story on camera. He's nervous, okay? So, I'm going to help you now because I know this story. You was at the fairground.
Yeah, but do you want the time frame on this, Bill?
Yeah.
That would have been, we were narrowed, based on what Andrew told us back at NAPIC and our own investigations, we narrowed the time frame down to the summer of 1981, and it was on the day of, or just the day before, the royal wedding.
After the TV news began reporting Vishal's disappearance, Rita rang the police who came to interview her, and she gave them the description of the teeth.
They looked at each other, sort of gave a darting look to each other, and one of them said, "Hallelujah."
An indication that they felt that
I had actually seen the right, you know, it was him.
What did you think?
I thought, oh my God, it was him.
Rita was interviewed a number of times and then taken back to Deoda Road.
I had to walk with them and do exactly the trip I'd taken on that day. And when we came to the footbridge, in the gutter was the wrapper from the bar of chocolate.
And the police picked that up?
No, because in those days they didn't do DNA. It wasn't known in those days, it's so long ago.
So they left it?
It was left there, yes.
Right.
So we also know the identity of the little half-caste boy that Andrew's talking about because he went missing the same day.
He was handcuffed to a kid who's dead.
Well, he wasn't dead to start with.
Yeah, is this the 8-year-old kid?
Yeah. But I was only about, I think, no, he was 10. He looks younger than he was, but he was 10.
Yeah.
And it's also, some of the media found out now, because they did the checks on what things and stuff, and they found,
I feel lost.
And they know the lad,
He's lost.
They took him off the street in London. He wasn't from a children's home.
They just ran him off the street.
They slammed him off the street.
I dream about it sometimes, just seeing him by the bottom of the footbridge, and I don't know, it kind of haunts me a bit, really. I shall always be guilty that I didn't go and ask him if he was all right.
In the end, police thanked Rita for her time. She never heard from them again. Rita was one person in around 200 who said they saw Vishal in London. Her account was clearly taken seriously. Others were dismissed quite quickly, but some weren't followed up by police at all. In the late afternoon of the royal wedding, Jill Exelby was travelling by train to Balham to see her daughter, who was in hospital. Jill's family got in touch with me after they heard the interview on LBC with Vishal's dad. Jill, they say, was 100% certain she saw Vishal on that train. Sadly, Jill died just before Christmas last year, but she told her family everything she saw. Her granddaughter, Paige, tells the story.
It's very much hung over the family's head for quite a number of years. She got on the train, normal journey, until she was about to get off, basically, at Balham. She was watching this little boy running up and down the train, very excited, feet up on the chairs, constantly running about, smiling, laughing, and she noticed the bright white trainers with a blue flash.
The trainers. That's key. Rita said she couldn't remember the specific colour of the trainers, but for a striking blue flash in that they were brand new. The press reports at the time are conflicting about what colour the trainers were. Blue, black, white, all described in the articles. Vishamba says...
The white trainers, yes. The blue flash doesn't ring a bell at all. It may have been a blue stripe.
Flash or stripe, blue is there. And they were white and they were new. Jill told her family that she was in the carriage with the boy, another woman and a scruffy-looking man. Later that night, Jill watched the television and saw the picture of Vishal on the news.
Well, she knew straight away that it was him. As soon as she saw the child on the news, she knew it was the boy she'd seen, and she got my granddad to call the police straight away and give them the information that she knew, which was that he was wearing white trainers with a blue flash, and they said straight away that that information hasn't been given to the public yet, and that's what we have, so somebody will be able to see you, which they never was.
So your mum rang the police, she described what she saw, the police said yes, that's information that we've got but we haven't made public, so it would tally. The police said we'd come out to you, and it never happened.
Yeah, correct, it never happened. We called a number of other times, and they said that they would be out, but they never did.
Odd. But like with the teeth, it could have been that police withheld that distinguishing feature. But why say it's accurate and then do nothing? Years passed. Jill, watching the TV news, sees a picture of a man being sentenced for paedophilia, and it made her jump, because she recognised him.
Leslie Bailey was in the news. He came up on the news being arrested for a different case, and as soon as my nan saw him on the TV, my nan straight away, that was him, that's the man that was on the train with the little boy. And it was straight away, she knew. It was years later, and for her to know that that was him from a photograph years later, she was definite, she knew it was him.
Leslie Bailey was sentenced for the murder and abuse of children. He was part of a gang convicted. He was himself killed in prison in 1993. Paige says her grandmother reported her sighting to the police, but again heard nothing. This is where I get a little cynical. A woman, through a second-hand description, says she saw the boy with a paedophile on the train in the late afternoon he went missing. Given we know Vishal went missing in Putney, it's a long journey to get from there to the Northern Line down to Balham in that time frame. That notwithstanding, it's hard to know whether Leslie Bailey was in or out of prison at that time, and if she reported that to the police, why did they not follow it up? Vishamba agrees.
I'm not convinced at all that it was Vishal, because of the photograph of Vishal which the police were putting out and the reconstruction that they did. It would have misled anybody to think that a child could have been Vishal, because in my opinion none of these add up at all. It doesn't make sense.
So can we disprove it? Can we say categorically that this wasn't Bailey or Vishal? Harder to prove it wasn't Vishal, given police don't know his movements, but easier to find out whether it could have been Leslie Bailey, whether he was in or out of prison at that time. So things are finally starting to move forward. In the last episode, you heard from 2 potential witnesses. We also flagged them up to Sussex police, who conducted the original murder investigation. They had said to us from day one that they would review Vishal's case based on new evidence. Well, given that the XLB family had never been spoken to by police, did that constitute new evidence? A few days later, Vishal's dad, Vishamba, got a call.
In fact, I believe it was thanks to you that the Sussex police phoned me up and said that they would like to have a meeting.
2 officers met with Mr. Marotra, and yes, they would review the case.
He confirmed that they were here because of media pressure, and they were also, he also said that he had 22 boxes, and he said that it would take him at least a year to get to review this.
22 boxes of evidence available, including potentially the phone call Vishamba says he took, which is good, but there's more. So I am outside the Met Police's offices in Earl's Court. It's a bit like Scotland Yard, but probably slightly less famous. I've been asked to come here to hand over some audio and give it to both the Met and the detective who is reviewing Vishal's case at Sussex Police, because it looks like it might be helpful to them. It's a conversation I had with a man called Roger Stoodley. He was the lead detective on Operation Orchid, which was set up in the late 80s, and looked into the disappearance of young boys and the activities of a very notorious paedophile gang, a gang which included people like Sidney Cook and Leslie Bailey. I was asking him really to see whether it was possible that Leslie Bailey could have been on that train on the royal wedding day, given he was in and out of prison at the time. What I ended up finding out has led me here. So here's the conversation with Roger Stoodley that I'm about to give to the police, and that started with him explaining what Operation Orchid was all about.
So ran for about 4 years as a result of information coming from prison from an informant that a number of men from the East End had killed up to 12 young men in the course of sexual assaults. The perpetrators were in the main known to us from previous investigations conducted in the East End and with Essex Police. So we had a head start in identifying them. Our problem was to identify the victims.
The evidence for these claims, Roger said, came from a prison informant who was sharing a cell with Leslie Bailey and Sidney Cook. The men, along with Stephen Barrell and Robert Oliver, who were also convicted for the killing of 14-year-old Jason Swift, were apparently bragging about other crimes they'd committed, other lives they'd taken. The informant took details of 12 boys the men said they'd killed and gave them to the police.
I started on the premise that 12 was an unlikely number. I thought it was too high to have gone unnoticed, and I think initially we tried to disprove that number and tried to cut it down to a realistic figure. But during the course of the inquiries, it transpired that a large number of young boys had gone missing throughout the country. A lot of them were identified and found. Some were unidentified and never identified.
The informant was able to help the police focus their search for the victims. He provided the police with all the information he could, including drawing maps of where Bailey said bodies were buried. The informant was so appalled by what he was hearing that he even asked police to prolong his time in prison in order to gain more information. There's a report that after sharing a cell with one of the gang, he wrote in a letter to the police saying, "I cannot relate the fear I feel for children everywhere, while this man laughs and squeals in delight as he tells me of the things he has done and the things he intends to do in the future." And when you were investigating the number 12, be it that you were trying to knock that number down because you felt it was too high already, did the name Vishal Marotra ever come up?
It's not as a result of that. The name did come up as a result of our inquiries. We were obviously collecting the names of missing people,
He did that quite a few times.
Just kidnapping, taking them, fucking do what they want.
But that was
fucking.
He was just doing something on his own, not for the group. It was his own. When we was together, and I think that last night and everything, we was together. He was crying all the time for his mum. He said he loved his mum.
He was crying for his mum, and he said he loved his mum.
He told me he was taken from her before he was dead. He told me that why he was taking me back.
I want to go home to my mama.
Come on! Shut the doors and lock them tight. Now get below and get them crates ready. Give a bad boy.
See the article, I thought, fuck, this is the kid that Andrew woke up next to, dead. Fuck. I bet I am, and the thing is, I'm reading the paper and his old man saying, I believe Scotland Yard have helped cover up the death of my son, and I'm sitting.
And his name came up, but we found no connection.
Just another name on a long list of boys around the country who had gone missing. Operation Orchid did, though, have some success, if success is the right word. Stoodley and his team were able to convict the gang for the killing of 2 more boys.
Mark Toosey was just seduced at the fair at Wokingham by Sidney Cook with a promise of sweets, and he was taken off to be indecently assaulted and ultimately killed as a result of that. Barry Lewis in South London, we don't know. He was just taken very quickly off the streets in a matter of minutes and taken to Hackney, where he was again abused and killed.
In there ripping my fucking hair out, man. Ripping my hair out, Andrew, going, this is the fucking kid. If only Andrew could talk to the fucking dad, man, and put the dad's mind at rest. You know what I mean? But I don't expect you to do that, you know what I mean? Like, the old bill should be... It's got to be him. How many kids got took that day? You know what I mean? It's got to be him. Little mixed race kid, little Indianish looking kid. Little baby faced. He looked a bit Indian, yeah. Half caste.
Yeah, so you could say that's Indian, couldn't it? A bit Indian.
Yeah. Well, anyway, if you have a look on the internet when you can and type in Vishal, like Vishal, and the last name is Marotra. Vishal Marotra.
Boys lured with sweets picked up off the streets in the blink of an eye. The work Roger and his Operation Orchid team did resulted in Leslie Bailey's conviction for the murders of both Mark Tilsley, who was 7, and Barry Lewis, who was 6. The bodies were found disturbed in shallow graves out in the countryside. Bailey himself was murdered in prison, strangled in his cell in 1993. So what about Leslie Bailey being on that train on the day of the royal wedding? Could we now rule that out completely?
I wouldn't think it was highly likely. I can't say it wasn't likely, because we didn't obviously establish everything they'd done in their criminality, which could expose it to being incorrect, and he could have been involved. But I would have said still that it's highly unlikely.
We can't be sure, but we can be close to sure. So why the need to hand this interview to the police? Well, given that the informant had said 12 victims, which Roger said he was trying to whittle down, the police only found 3, which leaves a lot of potential victims still out there. And then there's this.
The informant who was in prison with Bailey and the others had recorded the fact that they said that an Asian lad had been involved and was likely to be one of the victims.
An Asian boy, aged, Roger says, somewhere between 8 and 14, linked by an informant to a gang already known to have kidnapped and murdered boys, but who the police were never able to identify. What speaks to me through this is, even though you don't have any formal evidence of a link between this group and Vishal, you've got an informant saying that there was spotted with an Indian boy which you said may be between the range of 8 and 14. You've got a gang who operates by encouraging people or these boys to go to have sweets or eat sweets and then taking them off the streets very, very quickly.
Certainly.
Same as in Vishal. The body was found in a shallow grave somewhere on a very small copse somewhere in the countryside that was then disturbed by animal activity potentially.
Oh, there's certainly similarities.
Could this Asian boy have been Vishal? And could the police have followed it up more? These are questions that we can now confirm on the basis of this interview that the police watchdog are now asking.
And it was in the Mirror, front page, boy missing 1981 Barnes High Street. You'll see it anyway.
That'd be him, yeah.
It's got to be him, man. It's got to be him. But once again, see, even that, like, that's just my view, and I reckon I'm right. But I don't want to push you on nothing, because I'm pretty sure anything you've told me, you've told all the old Bill anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think his name, any kid could have been the name of the kid.
No, because Chris confirmed it for you.
Yeah.
Chris confirmed it for you, and he went, it might be, yeah.
Chris confirms a lot of things.
A bell rings a bell.
And a great big list of kids' names and stuff.
Did the name Vishal and Marotra come out?
Rings a bell, it could possibly. Yeah. No. A bell rings a bell.
There couldn't have been two boys called Vishal, age 8, taken from Barnes High Street on the way back from the royal wedding, and then I could, in my mind, I flipped back to the cabin interview with me and you. I'll just tell you what you said. Like on the cabin interview with me from now, you then said that you went into it a little bit more. You said he weren't for the group. He was just taken off the street.
They took him off the street in London. He went from a children's home.
He just round him off the street.
They slammed him off the street. They did that quite a few times.
Just kidnapping, taking them, fucking do what they want.
But that was
fucking.
He was just doing something on his own. Not for the group, it was his own.
Operation Orchid is now being investigated by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. When I found this out, I rang Vishal. He said it's huge progress.
I was very pleasantly surprised because it seems that somebody is taking things a bit seriously for the first time after 33 years.
He's right. The Met are putting more and more resources to working on this case. Progress is being made. We're getting somewhere. On Sunday the 21st of February 1982, two brothers, Basil and Roy Collins, were on a pigeon shoot around Alder Copse in Sussex. Their shoot was cut short when they found the skeletal remains of a young boy. The shallow grave he was buried in had been disturbed by animals. The two men were interviewed by Sussex police, who began house-to-house inquiries. Both Basil and Roy died some time ago. I did speak to Basil's wife. She didn't want to talk, but she said the whole incident had affected her husband very badly, that it had haunted him for the rest of his life. The huge police operation in Sussex got going, but found nothing. They arrested 5 or 6 unidentified people, interviewed a witness who says they saw 2 men throw a sack over a fence near to where the body was found, and police found a pair of size 10 shoes in a bog near to the body. Nothing came of it. Another witness was given hypnotherapy to try and remember the number plate of a Lancia car he saw parked at a funny angle in the lay-by next to where Vishal was found. It didn't work. No significant suspects were ever identified.
Andrew, can you just have a look at his picture and just confirm to me? Because it's the only way we're going to get anywhere, isn't it? Have a look at his picture, man, and just tell me if it's him. Let me go to Google. Right, let me go to Google and just, because it's the only way to do it. It's got to be, man. Vishal. Only you know, like, who you was next to, you know what I mean? And
by the end of January 1983, the incident rooms in Putney, where the Met were working, and in Chichester, where Sussex police were working, were scaled down. The case officially went cold. I did track down one of the senior officers involved in the Sussex operation, and he said some strange things. He said they never arrested anyone, that the Met never told them anything about a tape, or that they had looked into known paedophiles. In fact, this officer told me they'd never considered a sexual motive at all when investigating the case. Which is odd. In fact, lots that has happened since 1983 at Sussex Police regarding this case is pretty odd. In 2001, the force began a review of a number of cold cases. In the press at the time, there are reports saying that the police would look into Vishal's death and the original investigation. The police would go back over all the material, all the evidence, to see if anything new could be brought to light. That review was carried out by Dave Gaylor.
The initial process is to try and track down and identify all the paperwork, all the exhibits that might still exist. That's quite a long process, and that was really the starting point, and would be the starting point for any review. See what you've got, and then actually go through every single document. Documents, from what I could gather, may have well existed in a number of police stations. There would have been inquiries to be carried out with the Forensic Science Service, who were going through a process of change, so exhibits may have been at more than one laboratory, if they still existed. So that would have been the process to begin with.
A process that would take a good deal of time. Detective Gaylor therefore rang Vishamba.
I thought it was right and proper to ring the boy's father and just said to him, this is what the process is, this is what we will be doing, and in due course we will be in touch with you.
Except they never were, because the review, publicised in the press, highlighted to the father of a murdered boy, never happened. So how long did it take you then to gather all the paperwork?
It didn't, because actually I was moved on before that process started. I was never in a position to actually sit down anywhere and start looking at what existed.
Why weren't you in that position? What happened to change that?
I was moved from the job I was doing to another job.
So you're saying that you literally spent, 24 hours looking into it?
Yeah.
Detective Gaylor went on to another department. The review never happened. A hard thing to then tell Vishal's dad that the review hadn't even started, let alone found anything new. Well, it would have been hard to tell him, had Sussex Police done so.
No such contact took place.
Years pass. In 2005, another review begins. Again, Vishamba is told about it, but again hears nothing. In fact, no one hears anything, because the outcome of the review is kept secret.
If you tell me that this is him and you can't go forward because people are putting you under pressure, I fully understand.
Until now. And after reading the 22 heavily redacted pages, it leaves Vishamba feeling like this.
Well, I honestly feel that the police have let me down very, very badly. I cannot see anything in this report to give me any sense of comfort that they have done their job thoroughly or properly, or in any event, they have not caught anybody in 33 years, not even remotely coming close to it. So when they make a statement at the very beginning, when it says, despite extensive inquiries by both Sussex and the Metropolitan Police, there were no significant suspects identified by either of the investigations. Both services were unable to ascertain when, how, where, or why Vishal died. And yet, the rest of the document seems to suggest that there is a very clear direction that the police were taking, namely that he must have been murdered by a pedophile gang or some individual, and that there was a direct correlation between the two.
And I won't push you on it, right? I won't. I promise you, I won't push you on it. But I just, I know it's him, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, this is him. Right, Yeah, he's got like them milk teeth up the top, up the front, yeah. And the kid had that, yeah.
On one hand, it suggests there was no chance of any suspects ever being identified, let alone in 1982, yet goes on to suggest re-interviewing or interviewing, presumably for the first time, at least 6 people. Their names are redacted. Vishal talks about a very clear direction that the police were taking, and the direction of travel seems to head directly towards Sidney Cook. In 1986, 1998, and a third unspecified date, the Met, Sussex and Thames Valley Police looked at connections between the murders of Jason Swift, Barry Lewis and Mark Tilsley, all of whom were killed by Cook and his gang, and Vishal. Files were requested from Sussex by Thames Valley Police, exhibits asked for by the Met's Peadophile Squad, reports on the 4 boys and the connections between their murders sent between the forces. And on each of the 3 occasions, this is the concluding line.
There are no follow-up reports or letters as to how the situation was left or to be resolved.
In their own words, the Met said in 1998 that there were strong similarities between the boys killed by Cook and his gang, particularly Jason Swift, and Vishal's murder. One can't help but get the feeling at every time the police try and look for connections between Sidney Cook's gang and your son's murder, something stops.
Well, that is obvious to me.
So, here are the things we know. We know a report of a woman apparently seeing Vishal on the train with one of Cook's gang members says it was never looked into by police. We know that the informant, whose information led to the gang being convicted of killing 3 boys, said an Asian boy had been described as a victim. We know that 3 times since 1982, police have looked at links between Cook and Vishal, with no conclusion ever reported. We know that this gang worked as fairground staff to lure boys away, and we know, through this report, that fairgrounds were in operation in Putney on the afternoon Vishal went missing. Do you think there's a point here at which we say those links now need to be looked at?
Well, it's always better late than never because I need closure. The connections are there and you'll have made the connections, and it is their duty now to make sure that they do a thorough investigation and try and find the truth and to reopen the case. It is not right that I should continue to live with this for the rest of my life.
Over the last 5 weeks, we've exposed links to this gang. They are there in black and white. And yet when police begin to pursue those links, files close, reports go missing from case papers, interest stops. And Vishal is left wondering still, what happened to his son?
I'm not looking for any sympathy from anybody, but I do want the truth.
We're not finished yet, so I'll invite the chair and panel to take their break, and we'll come back, I assume, a little after half. Give us your name, please.
Paul Holmes, Holmes.
Mr. Holmes, you've made a very full statement to the inquiry.
Yes, sir. As far as I remember, probably more in a more detailed way. In terms of when we came on to look at Mr. Twiss in 1978, if you will, the common thread was that one of the team was a Constable Maurice Malin. And Maurice Malin was one of the principal investigators of the Playland. We called it Playland 2 because there'd been an earlier one.
Yes.
He was one of the principal investigators of Playland 2. So in effect, he was the link between the 2 cases.
And was there any link between Playland 2 and the operations that you and Mr. Sinclair were embarking on in the late 70s?
Well, the intelligence suggested very much so there was a link. Yeah. Because in fact there were personalities that stood trial from Playland 1 that ran into Playland 2 and was suggested by the intelligence. I want to be very careful to make the difference between intelligence and evidence.
Sure.
The intelligence strongly suggested from reliable sources that had carried on into the Twiss investigation.
Yeah. Client base included men from the higher echelons of society who were believed to operate in some form of network.
That's correct.
Now, pausing there, what did you mean by the higher echelons of society?
I've got a great deal of nervousness as to what the correct terminology should be here. I mean, to be frank and with respect, the whole thing is based here upon an inquiry into a cover-up by Westminster, suggesting that if a cover-up took place, and I suggest it did, then it was all based around the Palace of Westminster. And my experience is it was wider than that, but it depends what label you give it. I used to give it the label of either higher echelon or establishment, because there were other figures, significant figures involved both by form of conviction and intelligence that, as far as I was aware, had no political careers whatsoever. They weren't involved in the Palace of Westminster as such. So if we're talking higher echelons of society, I don't know if it makes it any more accurate. I'm talking about establishment figures. It's aristocratic families, senior, long-established families. It wasn't all just politicos.
It's not limited to those associated with Westminster, but it was wider than that as well.
Absolutely, as was proved by Playland 2.
And you say that these higher echelon clients couldn't afford to risk being seen in the company of rent boys in Piccadilly Circus, especially following the 1975 conviction of Charles Hornby, who's one of the individuals I'm sure you're referring to as a member of the higher echelons of society.
That's right.
As a result of the second Playland Arcade prosecution. Mm-hmm. And then going to the top of page 3, you say, as was shown to be the case, forgive me, in the Playland Arcade investigation, and was confirmed by your own observations as a patrolling officer, a number of men not drawn from the higher echelons of society played the role of procurers. So these were middlemen, known to you colloquially as hooks.
That's right.
Was that your own word, or it was a word parlance used in the unit?
It was parlance generally used by us and by the people and the protagonists in the business.
And their job was to identify, procure, and then supply the boys to these better connected clients.
Yeah, but the significance, if I may say, the significance of the convictions of Charlie Hornby was up until the Playland 2 convictions. It wasn't an uncommon event for, how can I put it, people that would be probably publicly known would appear in the environs of the Meat Rack and Playland Arcade. Yeah. And our hypothesis, based on intelligence at the time we started the Twiss inquiry in 1978, was that the mistake, if you will, that Charlie Hornby had made was to be seen on the Meat Rack.
Too close to it.
Too close to it.
Yeah.
And in effect, our hypothesis at the start of the Twiss inquiry was, as a result of that lesson, because Charlie Hornby had gone to prison, the issue was, the modus operandi had always been that there were these lower level, usually criminal background individuals that we knew, well, I've got to be careful with my language here.
Well, you don't have to be that careful, Mr.
The Playland Arcade operation had a massive aftermath to it. And the idea that this didn't exist, as far as we were concerned, was no longer the issue. The issue, the proposal that, whether you call it higher echelon people, establishment Westminster, were involved in exploiting vulnerable as a result of their trust in him as a consequence of his work with the victim witnesses in the Playland 2 inquiry. So the information came from a source that had been tested and was highly regarded. Yeah.
Right.
Witness that has come to us because he doesn't want to go.
Keep saying they all know each other. I mean, you've just finished the circle.
That's not me. It's not me. You know, it's just not me now. I've had too much else to think about over the past years to just go back to being a person now that just like, yeah, man, I got this new beat the other day, I can't wait to, but just can't no more. It's gone way past that. I'm just not that person anymore. It is a shame, but you got these people to thank for that. You know what I mean? You got these people to thank for that. They're the ones that killed it, you know, and they're happy about that. They're happy they took me away from music and tried to turn me into some fucking sort of a cunt, but I'll spend the rest of my life fighting these people back. And I'll tell you now, Bill Maloney, if you're watching, you're going to prison, mate, for what you try to do to me. I've got all the evidence that I need against you, and you're going to fucking prison. But you're trying to walk me into a fucking trap for other people to set me up. It's all there. You ain't getting out of it. You ain't fucking getting out of it. You're not. And I don't even care if you're counterintelligence. Because that's who I believe all these people are.
Counterintelligence. It makes sense that counterintelligence would be behind fucking me up and trying to fuck up the phone hacking stuff, because it was counterintelligence that got involved when it all broke with the Mulcair notes and everything. So it would make sense, really, you know. And someone's dad used to be ex-counterintelligence, yeah? Remember that. It marries up. It marries up. So, yeah, I'll get them, man. I'll get them. I will get them in the end. Regardless. And I'll do it on my own. I'll do it on my own. I've got all the evidence. I've got enough evidence there, man, to do it on my own. I don't actually fucking need anyone. And I don't need people fucking rallying around me trying to fuck up my shit. Because I'll just fuck everyone off. I will. That's what I do. And I just do shit on my own. I know how to use fucking cameras. I know how to set shit up. I know how to fucking film. I know how to green screen. I know how to do all that shit. I don't actually need anyone. And that's because I've had fucking a lot of time to fucking work out how to do it all. And it's all played a part. All of that fucking solitude, being on my own, being fucked and all that. It made me actually sit down, assess who I am, what I need to do, and actually fucking learn a thing or two. So it's played its part. And yeah, man, don't forget, coming soon. Yeah, don't forget, yeah. Coming soon, mate. Coming soon. Yeah, everything does happen for a reason. You're right. Listen, one day, if I'll be too fucking old time I get through all of this shit to go back to singing. I'll be too old. This is what's got to happen next. Right, this. All these fucking people, apart from the exception of a few, right, and I do mean a few. John Alford, he's a good one, I like John. Millie Dale, poor girl. But all these other people, I like you. Ian's, wait. Shh. Good boy. Yeah. All the other people, fucking wankers, mate. Fucking wankers. Cover that up at night. Why? I need to cover it up. Yeah, they do all look fucking disgusting. I mean, look at this geezer here. This bloke here was the bloke that done the fucking ecstasy interview with me. And he's got fucking Andy Coulson's old job at 10 Downing Street. I mean, fuck me, man. What is that all about? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, let's fucking screw Brian Harvey over and then you can have a fucking right custy job. You know what I mean? And this fucking bloke here, well, look at the picture, it fucking speaks for itself, doesn't it? You know what I mean? And slowly, like, John Harris, like, listen, man, I liked John. And I've got questions, but I like John. I really did like John. This bloke here, he's another one who's on the other end of things, trying to wind me up and get me nicked.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show, in association with David Icke.
I know he knows him. Do you know what I mean? I'll talk to him, and then he's on the show 2 weeks later, and he's calling him mate, after he's just agreed with me that, you know what I mean, what's going on with me ain't right. Then he's on the show calling him mate. Yeah, and he's his funder. Yeah, and he's in with it. And there's Bill's, I don't even know if it's his wife. I don't believe it myself. And then you got this bloke, yeah, and you got this bird who works with this bloke, who knows this bloke, who shot a film for Tony and didn't want to talk to me about it. And he's accusing this bloke, yeah, and this bloke is in chambers with a guy called Lord Grabiner, who was instructing Murdoch solicitors against me in the court. Yeah, you got this bird up here who wants to give it, oh no, I didn't know about phone hacking and that, I found out 2 weeks ago, fucking liar. You got this fucking prick here, you got this bloke here who knows this bloke here, yeah. You got, this is the bird here, Channel 4, Hayley Barlow. She's the one who sends the email out with Neil Wallace on it, yeah, and where is he? Andy Coulson. Yeah, which proves that they all knew about phone tapping. But it's this bird that sends that email out. And where does she work? Channel 4. Head of Communications at Channel 4. She'll be the one that took down the word interview for this man. Yeah? So you can see how they all connect up. And you've got Andrew Ash there, poor sod. Still like to be able to help that geezer if I can. I know he's been made to lie, but at least he's admitted it to me. You know what I mean? And he's had people rallying round him all his life, fucking abusing him and fucking just manipulating him, fucking poor sod. Do I believe he's a bad bloke? No, I don't. Do I believe he's a bad bloke? Yes, I fucking do. Another fucking ringleader there trying to play it like a caring old man. Yeah? Who was arrested, and then DCI Paul Settle goes to him. Yeah? But no one wants to fucking talk about that bit. This poor bloke here was only doing his job, who worked at Mallett's and sent me Kellaway's statement, when this bloke, Richard Mallett, should have fucking sent me it. And it dodgy that fucking Bill Maloney makes Andrew Ash say his name on the list. How dodgy's that? No, it's not connected though, is it at all? Of course it ain't. Fucking Comrade Brown knocking on my door after I've just got fucking Kellaway's statement, who fucking done the Millie Dowler story and fucking done me at the same time. He's got this bloke doing recordings for him, who is partners with this bloke. Yeah? And his recordings that he was doing of me, and his recordings that he was doing of me, they're all getting transcribed on the same date as this geezer's doing my mobile phone, right? So if Kellaway has got Comrade Brown doing recordings for him, and Comrade Brown only works with Mazza Mahmood, the fake sheikh, and Comrade's transcribing his recordings, the 2nd of the 5th 02 done by him, who only works with him, well, he's doing my mobile at the same date, so therefore I've just connected him to him, and he don't like it. Well, unlucky, mate. Unlucky. And he can't help ya, and he can't help ya, he can't help ya, he can't help ya. None of them can fucking help ya. This bloke tried to fucking set me up and all. You know what I mean? Walking me into an LBC fucking interview. Yeah? When this bloke is the one that apparently funded Andrew in the beginning. So when I go to Parliament to see Simon Danchuk, Tom Watson's sitting in the background watching me deliver evidence that he's fucking set up. And we even asked him in Parliament, you're the one that funded Andrew and told him to do his story, aren't you? And he said, yes. Not once, but twice. Got this fucking pillock over here didn't want to fucking talk to me, because he's fucking got him working at his fucking office at the time. So of course he doesn't want to hear about my phone tapping evidence that incriminates him. Yeah? You got fucking Greg Miskill up there, who's the news editor at the time, who's blatantly admitted out of his own mouth, we know how the information was gleaned and her phone was tapped. You heard it. You fucking heard it. So if that's the ramblings of a fucking madman, then good luck to me. I'm fucking very clever at making shit up then, aren't I?